Bayonetta 3 left us with so many questions, and I'm going to answer all of them right now. Why do Luka and Viola have Twilight powers? So it looks like the Redgrave bloodline has had this magical power this whole entire time, but was unactivated. Though I can argue that Luka only had the Strider/Twilight powers during the events of the Homunculi invasion. This is because only when he was possessed or being controlled by Dark Adam, it's likely that this was his only source of Twilight magic, even if he couldn't consciously control it. So to clarify, these powers so far were only activated in the Alphaverse timeline and Lukaon's timeline where Faeries rule. Only until all the Arch Atoms combined, and that's when Luka apparently learned how to fully control his Twilight Strength. However, there is proof that the Redgrave bloodline has had this power all this time but was unactivated. In Viola's timeline, her biological mother seemed to have given, quote-unquote, her last moments of magic, which I argue is what activated her Twilight magic. It wouldn't really make sense if Whittingham Bayonetta gave her Twilight magic, since, well, why would Whittingham Bayonetta have Twilight magic? An activation spell fits so much better. Also, I know it could just be a reused design and all that development shortcut and shit, but Lukaon's outfit, or at least his chestplate, has a similar pattern to young Balder from Bayonetta 2. Could the Faeries be a derivative or a branch from the Lumen Sages in this timeline, or in his timeline, that were a last resort in making sure a remnant of the Lumen Sages survived, where this magic was developed with the help of the Faeries? Or again, maybe his outfit was just inspired by it. Adding on to Lukaon, who has mastered Twilight magic, from a little digging his name could be derived from the mythical king Lukaon, who is said allegedly to be the first werewolf in mythology. He was seen as a mischievous king, who was tested by Zeus himself. There are many versions of this story that will take hours to dive into, but at least you get the picture on how this could have inspired Lukaon and Dark Adam, with all the similarities and whatnot. But maybe there's one more clue at the end of this video that'll explore into the origin of Twilight powers. Why is Alraun alive in Bayonetta 3? In Phenomenal Remnant 3, you may ask, why is Alraun alive? I immediately thought multiverse, though how come if she is an Inferno resident, there are more than one of them? Since I said, do they all have multiple universes or different timelines or variants within them? No, there is only one Jubileus, one Sheba, and one Omni. However, in episode 12 and episode 40, we remembered that Alraun was a human royal from Earth before she suicided. Over a week ago, Vengeance asked me the same question, where I deduced that she was from the World of Chaos and a World of Chaos citizen originally, which allows her to have multiversal variants. The same with Madama Butterfly. With Viola's recount of how she ate John, this adds to the theory that the events of Bayonetta 2 similarly happened in Bayonetta 3 prior to the Homunculi invasion. But I also think realistically she's a non-canon Easter egg, just like how in Nier Automata you have a Final Fantasy weapon unconnected to the main story. They are not the same Bayonetta. The end of Bayonetta 3 saw two original Bayonettas helping us out. People have been saying that Bayonetta 1 and 2's Bayonetta are the same person. Well, they are right. Kinda. All three Bayonettas are different people from different timelines, and that these two are not plucked from one timeline. The guns confirm that they are from Bayonettas of the multiverse, but you can also argue that they can still be from the same timeline even with this rule set. However, upon meeting Singularity, he confirms that he destroyed their worlds long ago. I destroyed worlds long ago. Indicating plural, hence these two are from different worlds. But it's not to say that Bayonetta 2's Bayonetta didn't experience the life that Bayonetta 1 Bayonetta experienced. She just experienced that life in her timeline, which is almost a similar copy. Why didn't Aesir step in when Singularity invaded the Bayoverse? Because he's dead. Really, I theorized that Bayonetta 3's Bayonetta fought Lopter and had her own adventures with her Loki of her timeline. However, I like to think that she had the least trouble fighting Lopter and defeated him easily without anyone's help, since she did have over 500 years more experience, since she wasn't sealed. So no Aesir of the Brave timeline. But how about Brave Loki? Why didn't he appear? It's likely that Loki of the Brave timeline disappeared in the same fashion as Loki in Bayonetta 2's timeline. Maybe he was reincarnated and was quite young during the events of the Homunculi invasion. Or maybe he did notice the Homunculi events happening in this timeline while we were having our adventures with Viola and was actually dealing with them at Fimbulventr. That wasn't showcased to us. But you also have the idea that Loki wasn't enough. Since Singularity had already destroyed B1 and B2's timelines and worlds, it looks like Loki of B2's timeline was also eliminated, being unable to protect his world. This is why I believe Aesir was trying to get the eyes of the world for a fighting chance against this bigger threat. But hopefully, Loki of B2's timeline escaped. I'm counting on that. It'd make for a very interesting story that he escaped his timeline meeting a slightly older Viola in her next arc. But this leads me to the strongest being in the Bayoverse. Why didn't Radahn interfere against Singularity? This was one of my biggest hopes in Bayonetta 3. Though some argue that this is not in his character, while I do see where they're coming from, I saw Singularity as a perfect candidate to show off Radahn's fighting, especially through a cinematic, at least showcasing how strong he is and why they call him the Infinite One. They even have hints hints or clues that he was even a little bit concerned in the prologue chapter and in chapter 1. Now, if you want to go with where the story is so far, it's probably because, quote unquote, it wasn't his concern, as some people argue, which I think if that is the case, it's quite bad writing. If they wanted that to be true, I wouldn't have made him concerned in the first few chapters in the first place. But staying optimistic, is there an even bigger threat than Singularity that he'll eventually fight? If so, the writers are going to have to top off the vibe that Singularity gave, which I think is going to be pretty difficult. How and why did John die? I think they tried to create shock value, but it kind of failed doing so. I also have a theory that she was the one in the photo frame, meaning she's alive in the Brave timeline. But if she is a master of dodging, why didn't she sense that? If you want to go with what the story has so far, the only way I could make sense of that is that Sigurd discovered a way to be faster than Umbran Witch reflexes and their time manipulation, which is proven when Bayonetta used Witch Time, and he actually defied it in the cinematic. Therefore, Sigurd found a way to be faster than what witches can comprehend, which now that I think about it, it's quite cool. But if this is not the case, I genuinely have no fucking idea what they were thinking. Who is this mysterious character in the end credit scene? Click this video to find out, which dives more into the Twilight powers and this character. I'm Raken, and never get disheartened.